Hello class, and welcome back to the second part of our lecture on learning. So let's continue on with operant conditioning now. So operant conditioning is a type of learning where an individual's behavior is shaped by the consequences of that behavior. So in simpler terms, it is a process where we learn to behave in a certain way based on the outcomes of our actions. Now, let's take a deeper dive into the fascinating story of B.F. Skinner and how he discovered operant conditioning. B.F., his formal name is Burrhus Frederick Skinner, was an American psychologist who was widely known for his work in the field of behaviorism. In the late 1930s, Skinner began to conduct experiments with rats and pigeons, hoping to understand how animals learn through reinforcement. One of Skinner's most famous experiments involved a hungry rat in a small enclosure that was called a Skinner box. Inside the box was a lever that the rat could push to receive food. At first, the rat pressed the lever randomly, but eventually it learned to press the lever more frequently when it was hungry and wanted food. Skinner discovered that by rewarding the rat with food every time it pressed the lever, he could reinforce the behavior, making the rat more likely to press the lever in the future. Skinner also found that if he punished the rat, for example, by delivering an electric shock every time it pressed the lever, the rat would be less likely to press the lever in the future. Skinner's research showed that animals, and by implication humans, learn through the consequences of their actions. Positive reinforcement, that is rewarding desirable behavior, and negative reinforcement, that is removing an unpleasant stimulus to increase desirable behavior, can strengthen behavior, while punishment can weaken it. Skinner's work in operant conditioning revolutionized the field of psychology and had many practical implications, including the development of animal training techniques and the treatment of behavioral disorders in people. So, next time you feel motivated to work hard because you know that you will be rewarded in the end, or you hesitate to engage in a behavior because you know that it will result in negative consequences, remember that you're experiencing operant conditioning in action. Now, there's also Edward Thorndike, who was also an American psychologist who conducted research on animals in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and his work contributed significantly to the concept of operant conditioning. And Thorndike conducted a series of experiments with cats in puzzle boxes. The cats were placed in the boxes and had to figure out how to escape to get a piece of food. And Thorndike found that the cats did not immediately figure out how to escape, but over time they began to exhibit more effective behaviors. For example, they might start pawing at the latch or meowing to attract attention. And through his research, Thorndike developed the law of effect, which basically states that behaviors followed by positive outcomes are strengthened and behaviors followed by negative outcomes are weakened. This idea formed the basis of operant conditioning, which focuses on how behaviors are shaped by the consequences of those behaviors. Now, Thorndike's work was significant because it demonstrated that animals and people learn through trial and error, and that the consequences of our actions can shape our behavior. Today, operant conditioning is used in many areas of psychology, including things like education, therapy, and animal training. And Thorndike's contributions to the field continue to be recognized and celebrated. Now, once upon a time, there was a dog named Mari. And Mari was a friendly dog, but she had a habit of jumping up on people when she got excited. And her owner, a boy named Aiden, had tried many things to stop Mari from jumping up, but nothing seemed to work. And one day, Aiden decided to try using operant conditioning to train Mari. He brought a bag of her favorite treats and started working with her every day. And every time Mari greeted Aiden calmly and didn't jump, he would give her a treat. But if she jumped, he would turn around and ignore her until she calmed down. At first, Mari didn't understand what was happening and continued to jump on Aiden. But as Aiden remained consistent with the rewards and ignoring her when she jumped, Mari started to catch on. She realized that she would only get a treat if she greeted Aiden calmly. Over time, Mari's behavior began to change, and she stopped jumping on Aiden altogether eventually. Now, Aiden uses operant conditioning to train Mari in all sorts of behaviors, from sitting down and staying to fetching and playing. And Mari is so much more a happy dog. Now, not only does she get to spend more time with Aiden, but she also knows what behavior is expected of her and how she will be rewarded for it. So in telling this story, we see that operant conditioning was used to shape Mari's behavior and teach her what was expected of her. By rewarding desirable behavior and ignoring undesirable behavior, Mari learned how to behave appropriately and became a happier, more well-behaved dog. Operant conditioning helps people learn by reinforcing desirable behavior and by discouraging undesirable behavior. And here's some examples of how operant conditioning can be used in different situations. So, for example, in the classroom, with classroom behavior, teachers can use operant conditioning to reinforce positive behavior in the classroom, such as raising a hand before speaking or staying on task during work time. And this can be done by giving praise and rewards or other positive consequences for good behavior while ignoring or providing negative consequences for undesirable behavior. By doing this, students learn what behavior is expected of them and are more likely to engage in positive behaviors in the future. Another area might be sports training. So, for example, coaches can use operant conditioning to reinforce desirable behaviors in their athletes, such as following proper form or hustle on the field. And this can be done by rewarding good behavior with praise, extra playing time, or other positive consequences, while discouraging undesirable behavior with negative consequences. And by doing this, athletes learn what behavior is expected of them and are more likely to perform well in their sport. In parenting, a parent can use operant conditioning to reinforce positive behavior in their children, such as sharing or completing chores. This can be done by giving praise and rewards or other positive consequences for good behavior while ignoring or providing negative consequences for undesirable behavior. And by doing this, children learn what behavior is expected of them and are more likely to engage in positive behaviors in the future. So overall, I think there's some positive benefits of operant conditioning. First off, these include things like clear expectations. Operant conditioning provides clear expectations for behavior, which can help people know what is expected of them in a given situation. It provides positive reinforcement. So by using positive reinforcement, operant conditioning can help individuals feel motivated and encouraged to engage in positive behaviors. And it helps them engage in overall long-term learning, because operant conditioning can lead to long-term learning of desirable behaviors, which can lead to greater success in various settings such as school, work, or personal relationships. So overall, operant conditioning really is a useful tool for shaping behavior and helping individuals learn desirable behavior. And by providing clear expectations and positive reinforcement, operant conditioning can lead to long-term learning and success. Let's move on now to learning by insight and observation. So learning by insight is a type of learning that occurs when an individual suddenly solves a problem or understands a concept without any prior experience or reinforcement. You can kind of characterize it as a sudden aha moment of understanding. And one famous example of learning by insight comes from a study conducted by Wolfgang Kohler in the early 1900s. Now, in this study, Kohler placed a banana outside of a cage containing a hungry chimpanzee named Sultan. Inside the cage, Kohler placed a number of sticks that were too short for Sultan to reach the banana. Now, initially, Sultan tried to use the sticks in a variety of ways, such as poking at the banana or using them to scratch the cage, but he was unsuccessful in obtaining the banana. And after several attempts, Sultan suddenly stopped and looked around the cage. He then picked up 2 sticks, put them together to create a longer stick. And now he was able to reach the banana. And this sudden solution to the problem is an example of learning by insight, as Sultan was able to suddenly understand the concept of using 2 sticks together to create a longer stick without any prior experience or reinforcement. Kohler's study showed that animals can learn by insight as well. And that problem solving is not always a gradual process of trial and error. Instead, learning by insight can occur suddenly and without any prior reinforcement or experience. Learning by insight is important to people because it allows for sudden problem solving and understanding without relying on trial and error. And here's some examples of learning by insight. A scientist suddenly understands a complex theory. So you have a scientist working on a difficult research problem and suddenly has a breakthrough and understands a complex theory that had been eluding them. This insight allows the scientist to make significant progress in their research. Or maybe a student working on a difficult math problem suddenly has an aha moment and understands the solution without having to rely on memorization or formulaic problem solving. Or a musician playing an instrument improvises a new melody that they have never played before. They suddenly realize that they have this insight that allows the musician to create something unique, something new, something special. Or a chef experimenting with ingredients suddenly has an insight into a new recipe that becomes a hit with customers. And this sudden understanding allows the chef to create something new and exciting in the kitchen. So overall, I hope you see that learning by insight is important to people because it allows for creative problem solving, innovation, and progress in various fields. So by having sudden insights, individuals can understand complex concepts and ideas and develop new and innovative solutions to problems. Then there's observational learning, and this is a type of learning that occurs by watching and imitating others. And this type of learning can happen without any direct reinforcement or punishment. So, for example, Albert Bandura is a famous psychologist who is known for his work on observational learning. He conducted a study in the 1960s that is now known as the Bobo doll experiment. In this experiment, children were shown a video of an adult playing aggressively with a Bobo doll, such as hitting it with a hammer and punching it. And then the children were brought into a room with a Bobo doll and observed to see if they would imitate the aggressive behavior. Bandura found that the children who watched the aggressive video were more likely to imitate the behavior than those who did not. And this was evidence of observational learning, as the children learn the aggressive behavior simply by watching someone else do it. Bandura's study showed that children can learn behavior through observation and imitation, even without direct reinforcement or punishment. It also showed the importance of modeling positive behavior, as children are more likely to imitate positive behavior if they see it modeled for them. So learning by observation can be used in many ways in everyday life and can be beneficial to people in a variety of ways. For example, children often learn by observing their parents' behavior, or the behavior of teachers or other adults in their lives. By observing positive behaviors such as kindness and empathy, children can learn to model those behaviors themselves. Or employees can learn new skills and strategies by observing their colleagues or supervisors. And this can be especially helpful in industries where on-the-job training is common, such as healthcare or hospitality. Then students can learn from observing their teachers or peers in the classroom. For example, students who observe their classmates successfully completing a challenging assignment may be more motivated to attempt the assignment themselves. You can also learn things like social skills. So things like making eye contact and doing active listening can be learned by observing others who are skilled in those areas. And this can be especially beneficial for individuals with social anxiety or other difficulties in social situations. And then finally, observing what's going on in the media, such as television shows, movies, or online content. By observing positive behaviors and attitudes in media, individuals can learn new perspectives and ways of interacting with others. So overall, I hope you see that learning by observation can be a powerful tool for both personal and professional growth. And it can lead to positive changes in behavior and in attitudes. So I want to close out this lecture by giving you some practical examples of how these types of learning might be used by a social and community service worker, just to make these concepts a little more practical for you. So let's start off with something like classical conditioning. So here we have a social service worker named Maria, who was working with a group of young children who had experienced trauma and were struggling with anxiety and fear. And Maria knew that classical conditioning could be a useful tool in helping the children overcome their fears and feel more at ease. So Maria began by using a technique called systematic desensitization. So she first identified the specific stimuli that triggered anxiety in each child, such as loud noises or being in crowded spaces. She then gradually exposed the children to these stimuli in a safe and controlled environment, starting with mild triggers and slowly increasing the intensity over time. For example, one child named Sarah was extremely fearful of loud noises, and Maria began by exposing Sarah to a recording of a soft, low-level sound, such as a ticking clock. She then gradually increased the volume of the sound over several sessions until Sarah was comfortable with louder noises. So, to reinforce this new association between the formerly anxiety-provoking stimulus and a sense of safety and calm, Maria paired each exposure with a positive experience, like having a treat or playing with a toy. And over time, the children began to associate the formerly anxiety-provoking stimuli with positive feelings of safety and comfort, effectively overcoming their fears through classical conditioning. And as a result of Maria's efforts, the children in her care were able to overcome this anxiety and fear and were better equipped to handle the challenges of life. So, through the power of learning in classical conditioning, Maria was able to help these children build new positive associations with previously difficult situations and ultimately improve their quality of life. Another example, operant conditioning. So here we have a community service worker named Tom, who was working with a group of homeless individuals who were struggling to find and maintain stable housing. Now, Tom knew that operant conditioning could be a useful tool in helping the individuals develop the skills and behaviors that they needed to secure and maintain housing. So Tom began by identifying the specific behaviors that were needed to obtain housing, such as showing up at the appointment on time, showing and maintaining personal hygiene, and completing necessary paperwork. He then used a technique called positive reinforcement to reward individuals when they exhibited these behaviors. So, for example, if an individual showed up to an appointment on time, Tom would offer praise and a small reward, such as a food voucher or a bus pass. Similarly, if an individual completed necessary paperwork, Tom would offer praise and a small reward. And over time, these people began to associate these behaviors with positive outcomes, such as obtaining stable housing, and were more motivated to exhibit them. And through the power of operant conditioning, Tom was able to help these individuals develop the skills and behaviors needed to obtain and maintain stable housing, ultimately improving their quality of life. Now let's look at learning by observation. A community service worker named Sarah was working with a group of at-risk youth who were struggling in school and had behavioral issues. Sarah knew that learning by observation could be a useful tool in helping these youth develop positive behaviors and attitudes. And Sarah began by identifying positive role models in the community, such as local business owners and community leaders, and arranged for the youth to spend time observing and interacting with these individuals. And through these interactions, the youth were able to observe the positive behaviors and attitudes of these role models and learn from their example. For example, one youth named Marcus struggled with anger management and often reacted aggressively to situations. Sarah arranged for Marcus to spend time observing and working with a local business owner who had a reputation for remaining calm and composed in high-pressure situations. And through these interactions, Marcus was able to observe the business owner's positive behaviors and learn how to manage his own emotions more effectively. And over time, the youth began to develop more positive attitudes and behaviors and were more motivated to succeed in school and in their personal lives. So through the power of learning by observation, Sarah was able to help these people develop the skills and behaviors needed to succeed and thrive in their communities. And then finally, learning by insight. A social service worker named Emily was working with a group of adults with mental health disorders who were struggling to manage their symptoms and improve their overall well-being. And Emily knew that learning by insight could be a useful tool in helping these people develop a deeper understanding of their own thoughts and behaviors. So Emily began by facilitating group discussions and exercises designed to help these people reflect on their own experiences and thought processes. And through these exercises, these individuals were encouraged to think critically about their own behaviors and the motivations behind them. So, for example, one individual named Susan struggled with anxiety and often found herself avoiding social situations. So, through a guided exercise, Susan was able to reflect on her own thought patterns and identify that her fear of social situations was rooted in a fear of judgment and rejection. And with this insight, Susan was able to develop coping strategies to manage her anxiety and gradually become more comfortable in social situations. So overall, the individuals in the group were able to develop a deeper understanding of their own thoughts and behaviors and were better equipped then to manage their symptoms and improve their overall well-being. So through the power of learning by insight, Emily was able to help her group develop a deeper understanding of themselves and their experiences, ultimately improving the quality of their lives. So in closing, we have looked at 4 different forms of learning: classical conditioning, operant conditioning, learning by observation, and learning by insight. Each of these forms of learning plays a unique role in how we acquire new knowledge and behavior and skills. Classical conditioning allows us to form associations between different stimuli. Operant conditioning helps us to learn through the consequences of our actions. Learning by observation allows us to learn by watching the experiences of others. And learning by insight allows us to develop new understandings through critical reflection. And these different forms of learning can be seen in a wide range of real-life scenarios, from how we learn to associate certain foods with feelings of happiness, to how we develop coping mechanisms to manage things like anxiety and stress. So as we continue to explore the fascinating world of psychology, it's important to remember that our ability to learn is what allows us to grow and to adapt in an ever-changing world. By understanding the different ways in which we learn, we can become more effective in our own personal growth and in helping others to achieve their full potential. So let's embrace that power of learning and continue to explore the vast complexities of the mind, with the knowledge that through our continued curiosity and exploration, we can create positive change not only in ourselves, but in the world around us. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. You take care. Goodbye.